Well, good afternoon. My name is Corey McPherson, and I'm the University Chaplain and Protestant Campus Minister here at Colgate. And we gather here this afternoon, literally from around the world. Hundreds from around the world are gathering with us now as we celebrate and remember the life of Clark Perkins. I am so thankful to so many of his friends from Phillips Academy and Colgate who worked together to make this time possible. I'm especially thankful to Junius Williams and Phillips Academy Andover who organized this event and then were so gracious and kind to invite Colgate to participate, and Colgate alumni and current Colgate players of the lacrosse team. I don't know much about Phillips Academy Andover other than their great reputation, but I learned this week, and it became very clear to me, that their new head of school, Dr. Kington, Jenny Savino, and former head of school, John Palfrey, deeply love and care for their alumni. And that was just made so clear to me this week in preparing for this service to honor Clark, to remember Clark. And the same is true also for Colgate University. We deeply care and love our alumni and their families. And to this community that's gathered here in the chapel, and to all of those watching, on behalf of President Casey, Vice President, Director of Athletics, Nikki Moore, and on behalf of Colgate Lacrosse, all of whom are with us this afternoon here in the chapel, we want to extend our deepest sympathy to the Perkins family, to Charlotte, and to all of Clark's friends and loved ones. Know that we love you, care for you, and just so honored to remember Clark today in this time together. So in a few moments, you'll hear from Clark's friends, from Charlotte, from Colgate, from Phillips Academy, and you'll hear some stories that I hope make you laugh and smile and probably cry, and that's okay. And some of those that will be speaking, I'm sure they're a little nervous, and you can encourage them if you wish by being in the chat, which has been open on the Zoom call. So feel free to chat and offer words of encouragement and support to one another in this time together, and let's do the best that we can to build community. Finally, I want to say, in case anyone is wondering, we are going above and beyond what New York State regulation and guidelines are for the gatherings of religious services, funerals, and memorial services. Everyone's has a mask on, is socially distancing. I do not, but I'm well over 50 feet away. Diane does not, but we've actually even turned the piano, so when she's singing, you won't, we're just following all the guidelines. I'm sorry, we usually have flower arrangements for something like that, for this. But we're even not able to do that. So apologize for that, but please know we're following the guidelines. So before you hear from Clark's friends, I was asked to just give a brief reflection as the Protestant campus minister and how I got to know Clark through his time here at Colgate. And I remember the first time I saw him, it was Sunday night. We were here in the chapel for University Church, and Lucas was in the second row. You'll hear from Lucas in a few moments, and he had brought Clark with him to church, and I had never seen Clark before. And Lucas would occasionally bring players from the lacrosse team to church. He'd invite them, and I knew they were usually here for the dinner afterward. That's okay. I mean, I knew they were here for the food, but that's okay. No offense. I'm sure if you guys showed, it wouldn't be for the food. But Clark was sitting on the second row, and he was sitting on the edge of his seat, and his forearms were on the front of the pew, and he was like so engaged, and so he was listening to me, which was just a rare thing to see, actually, at University Church. But Clark was paying attention, and I realized at that moment, as I've reflected on getting to know Clark, I realized at that moment that God was working in Clark's life, that God was in Clark's life. And I got to know him several more times, got to see him several more times and have several conversations. I remember meeting his family in Charlotte. I think it was after the Easter Sunday service. They were here. Maybe it was a family weekend or something, but and how proud he was to introduce me to Charlotte and to his family. And I could just tell the Lord is with Clark. The Lord was with Clark that day. I could see the joy in his face, and we had become close enough. I mean, I'm not as close as some of the friends you're going to hear from today, but we became close enough where I could joke around with him and Lucas, and I'd met Charlotte, and Catherine was there, Lucas's now wife, and I did a typical chaplain joke, which is like a step worse than a dad joke. I turned to the two of them and I said, man, you two are dating way out of your league. Like, you guys are so far out of your league. These women are intelligent and sharp, and they're going to figure this out pretty quick. I mean, you guys are you guys. Like, and so I felt like our friendship was good enough where I could joke with him like that, but man, the Lord was with Clark that day, as he had this joy of being with family and those he loved. And then graduation weekend, he was commissioned that day, and President Casey and I had an opportunity to be at his commissioning ceremony. and actually participate in it. And he was just so proud to be commissioned and to God and country, and his family was so proud, and all those who loved him. And then he was celebrating because they were graduating, and then Lucas proposed that weekend, and it was just this incredible time. And God was with Clark. It was just so evident, and it was evident that God was working in Clark's life, and he started to recognize that and see that. And as they graduated, I kept in contact with Lucas, and he'd fill me in on how he was doing and how Clark was doing when they were at Quantico. And Quantico was an incredibly challenging time for both of them. But they found a Bible study that they attended together, and it became a source of community and a source of strength for them. And they found a church community in the D.C. area while they were there, and I was talking with Lucas yesterday and just reminding me of the story to make sure I had it correctly. And it was in that Bible study at Quantico where Clark made a commitment to follow God. He made a commitment to be a Christian. He too started to recognize that God was with him and working and moving in his life. And that Bible study and the church community and his friendship with Lucas and others was just a source of support and strength. Yes, the Lord was with Clark. And the Lord was with Clark as he went to Florida and went for further training and excelled there. And I don't remember the time frame, how long he was training there, but the Lord was with Clark as he continued to pursue his goals and dreams. And though there were challenges along the way, he had the strength to continue on, and the Lord was with Clark. And I remember the last time that I saw him. I was at the wedding of Lucas and Catherine last summer, and it was just a beautiful day. It was a beautiful ceremony for a Christian marriage. It signifies the unity and the love of Christ and his church. And it was this beautiful day of giving glory to God. And I remember near the end of the night, I saw Clark dancing with Charlotte. And I think I did another chaplain joke when I went up to say goodbye. I was like, you should probably let Charlotte be the dancer in this relationship, and just kind of gave him a hard time and said goodbye. And the Lord was with Clark that day. And as I reflect upon all the times I got to see him and reflect back, and I see the hand of God working in his life and Clark responding to the movement of God in his life, I realized that God was with him on the front pew that day. And that the Lord was with Clark when I met Charlotte and his family. And the Lord was with Clark when I was at the commissioning service. And the Lord was with Clark at Quantico. And the Lord was with Clark in Florida. And the Lord Thank you for everyone's patience. And I was reminding everyone of how I saw God at work in Clark's life, whether it was sitting here in the front pew at University Church that first Sunday I met him, whether it was meeting his family and friends, that the Lord was with him that day, that the Lord was with him at his commissioning service, that President Casey and I had an opportunity to attend, that the Lord was with him in a celebration of his graduation, that the Lord was with Clark in the very difficult days of Quantico, which were very challenging, incredibly challenging, but he succeeded and pushed through, which he's going to do. The Lord was with Clark in Florida as he continued his training and his desire to become a pilot, and was so successful there, and then went on to Corpus Christi, and the Lord was with him there. And I'm thankful that so many of the lacrosse team are here that maybe didn't even know Clark. I was speaking to the coach earlier. I guess in some ways, the lacrosse world, the college lacrosse world, is a smaller community. You kind of know people who played against each other or went to similar schools. There's all these connections. But it's good for you that didn't even know Clark to be with us today, because this time reminds us of how each day we have truly is a gift with friends. How each day we have to play a sport that you love truly is a gift. But again, I know that the Lord was with Clark every step of the way. And that beautiful wedding day, the Lord was with Clark. And while it's very difficult to understand this, and while it's very difficult to comprehend, I believe with every part of my being that the Lord is with Clark in the water that day. That the Lord is with Clark in the water that day. And while we don't understand why tragedies happen or why God could not have intervened, and there are questions that we will carry with us for quite some time, the Lord was with Clark in the water. As I was reflecting on this week, as I was reflecting on Clark's life and thinking about our time together today, I thought of an old spiritual. which Diane's going to be singing in a moment, called Precious Lord, Take My Hand. And that day at Quantico, on the Bible study, Clark really made a prayer to say, Lord, take my hand. And he became a Christian and really trusted in the Lord and started to live his life as a follower of God. But when Diane and were originally speaking, we weren't thinking of, in that context, we were thinking, and I was thinking of a song for you and all of his friends and loved ones that are watching. That this is an important song to sing at a memorial or funeral. It was written in the 40s. The writer of the song, his wife had passed in childbirth. He rushed home. He wasn't there at the time, and he was able to hold his newborn son and put him to sleep that night. His newborn son died that night. And in the morning, he wrote this song. And a verse that had me thinking of Clark, but also had me thinking of all of you that love Clark so dearly, is when it says, Precious Lord, take my hand. Lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me home. I know Clark had so many friends from different religious traditions and secular traditions, and that's one of the reasons why his life was so beautiful, but I hope and I appreciate you extending me grace to offer this message from a Christian perspective today, because as Christians we grieve, but we grieve in hope. What that means is that we really do know that the Lord took his hand, led him home, and that the Lord is with Christ today. And so we grieve, but we grieve with hope that we will one day be with him again. Diane is going to play that hymn for us, just a couple of verses, and then you're going to have an opportunity to hear from some Colgate alum, some former players, both from Colgate and Phillips Academy, as we truly celebrate the life of Clark and be reminded that the Lord is with him and that the Lord is with us.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me on. When the darkness appears and the night draws near and the day is past and gone, at the river I stand, guide my feet, hold my hand, take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.
Hey everyone, my name is Lucas Cooper, and like everyone that will speak today, I consider Clark my very best friend. For those of you that were able to make the memorial service in Austin 6 weeks ago, I implored you to resist the temptation to pray the simple prayer, to ask God, please take this pain away from me. Because you see, the only way for God to take away the pain would be to take away the memories. And I think that we can all agree that none of us wants to lose the memories we have of Clark and the way that those memories have shaped our experience and the people that we are today. Instead, I urged you to pray with me, to ask God to help me, help us live with that pain. Now, I don't know about y'all, but for me, living with that pain has been extraordinarily difficult. That pain is weighty. I carry it with me everywhere. It changes the way I interact with people and my perspective on the world. And it's not going anywhere. But that pain is an omnipresent reminder of Clark and the caliber man that he was, and the emptiness in this world without him. The weight of this pain is changing me, and in many ways for the better. Just the other day, I got to go golfing. It was an absolute zoo at the course, and the starter was overwhelmed. I ended up having to wait about an hour after my tee time, and I was paired with two strangers. The delay ensured that there'd be no way I could finish 18 holes that day. I was frustrated. But then stranger number one came up with a big smile and introduced himself. His name was Chris, and stranger number two was his son, Wesley. Like Clark, Chris was a natural conversationalist, and by the first green, we were already high-fiving. In that moment, I thought about Clark and how he'd never met a stranger, how he seemed to be the mayor of every town he ever stepped foot in. But Clark was more than that. While Chris and I will never speak again, Clark found a way to materialize lasting relationships seemingly out of thin air. I've witnessed this act many times. I mean, Charlotte fell in love with him after just one conversation. Maybe we all did. But the story that jumps out to me, the one I want to share with you today, is Clark's relationship with my youth pastor, Wes Whitney. Clark met Wes at my wedding, and they immediately hit it off. Before I knew it, Clark had offered to get Wes a drink, and they were carrying on their own conversation. Later that night, I remember getting a text from Wes that went something along the lines of, "Dude, met Clark today. He's just like you, but handsomer. I love him. If you want to be like Clark, buy a stranger a drink." The next day, I took my groomsmen and my ushers, which included both Clark and Wes, out on a boat. Wes and Clark joked around like old friends for most of the morning. We all drank, sang, and swam. But the next thing I know, Clark and Wes have sat down together in a quietish corner and are discussing Jesus and Clark's blossoming faith. It warmed my heart. If you want to be like Clark, ask the important questions. At the end of our little boating trip, we arrived at a resort where Catherine and I got married. This resort has no dock, so the plan was to swim the last 100 or so meters back to shore. Now, 100 or so meters doesn't seem like a big deal until you take into account two important things. One, by this point, we're all pretty drunk. And two, Wes has a deathly fear of sharks and swimming in the open ocean. While the rest of us jumped into the water with an every man for himself, meet you on the beach sort of way, Clark hung back to make sure Wes was okay. He jumped in the water with Wes and swam with him the whole way back to shore. Because you see, Clark was always there to help you in your times of trial. If you want to be like Clark, help your friends conquer their fear of sharks. Fast forward beyond my wedding weekend, and Clark and Wes were hanging out without me. They're meeting up in Houston to watch Charlotte dance. They're hanging out together on the beach in Corpus. They're planning hunting trips together in Southeast Texas. They had a real bond. And many of us might make a friend at a wedding. But Clark had a way of maintaining those relationships. He was the best of all of us at calling and checking in. Every time he got in his car, he called someone to see how they were and asked about their life. And he told them that he loved them. If you want to be like Clark, call someone you love every day. Clark was the very best of us, and living without him has been tremendously difficult. But the weight of this pain reminds me to live as he lived, to buy a stranger a drink, to ask the important questions, to help my friends conquer their fear of sharks, and to call someone I love every day. I can hope it can do the same for you. Thank you. I'm going to be turning it over to Nadia to share her remarks at this time.
Hi, everybody. My name is, first of all, thank you, Lucas, for the introduction, and thank you to everyone who made this Zoom call possible. And thank you, Janice, for inviting me to this platform to share a few words about Clark with you all. My name is Nadia Bischoff, and I met the Perkins family 23 years ago. I am Clark's and Lucia's and Sam's big sister, not blood related, but I was pretty much adopted into the family. Chip Perkins walked me down the aisle when I got married a few years ago, and the triplets became my two daughters, uncles, and aunt, and they were always present in my life, as was I for them while they were very little. Um, anyway, um, I met them 23 years ago. They were 2.5 years old. I was hired to take care of them, and Debbie and I spoke on the phone once, met at the train station. I was coming from New York City to Fairfield, Connecticut, and Sam, in that order, Sam, Lucia, and Clark were sitting on the front steps when I arrived to the home. And the rest is history. Like, we fell in love with each other. I was 19 years old. They were 2.5, and they became my little siblings, and I became their big sister. Over the years, our lives just made sense. You know, I did work for them, but we also had a special relationship. I watched Clark grow up from that tender age of 2.5 years old. And since he was very little, he always showed a lot of maturity. He was a very considerate child. It was a very unique. He was a very unique child. He was very loving. He always put Sam and Lucia first, no matter what happened. Clark always had Sam and Lucia as his best friends. And I know a lot of you found in him over the years to have that connection, because Clark made everybody always so important, always first. And that's what's so beautiful about Clark. Even though, like I said before, we weren't blood related, he also made me feel special. And can you believe a 2-year-old can make a teenager feel special? Only Clark can do that. And it was amazing. Clark always listened with the maturity and patience of an old man. He was always a loyal brother, a loving son and friend, but overall a very protective of all the people he loved. It didn't matter how long he knew you or how young or old you were, he always put you first. He was smart. He was an amazing athlete. I'm sure a lot of you guys who shared his youth years and young adult years know this and have many stories to share. I watched him grow, and he truly was always like that since he was a little boy. As I mentioned before, Sam, Lucia were always first in Clark's lives, and that triangle of love is the strongest love I've ever had the honor to watch grow over the years. And of course, mom and dad, Debbie and Chip, took a big part of it. And I am so grateful to life, to God, that I was part of Clark's life. I was part of Sam and Lucia's and Debbie and Chip. I had to get the courage to write a few words, and I spoke with them yesterday to get their blessing and told them how honored I am to speak with you today, not as probably his best friend, but a person who watched him grow and watch in just 25 years how amazing he was. You know, he was selfless. He gave back to his community. He loved his friends. He loved his family. He loved every single relationship he developed over the years. And I am so proud to have known him. And I will miss him every day, as we all are going through this right now. At the same time, I want to say that, as cliche as it sounds, things happen for a reason. And I know that Clark is out there somewhere watching over us, taking care of us, that person who was there in flesh and in person or through phone calls or FaceTime or whatever. He is with us in our hearts, and he'll always be there in our hearts, and will always send us signs to make sure we know he's never left us. Finally, I just want to say, I know it's never too early to toast, but here's to you, Clark. Thank you very much for allowing me to say a few words. And I'm gonna introduce Junius Williams as a next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nadia, for that kind introduction. And let me also thank Chip, Deb, Lucia, and Sam for allowing us to honor our friend Clark in this way. And of course, special thanks to my friends on the planning committee who helped put this event together. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a love supreme, the type of boundless love Clark had for his friends. In my meditation last night, I was drawn to the music of John Coltrane, in particular his album, A Love Supreme, which you should all listen to. In its 4 parts, acknowledgement, resolution, pursuance, and psalm, I found a way to narrate my reflection on the life Clark lived and what it means to me. So the first part is acknowledgement. Clark acknowledged his love to us in so many ways. His bear hugs were legendary, if a bit painful. He would happily go out of his way to show up for his friends' events, but he also manifested his love quietly. Clark and I were student body co-presidents at Andover. And after we won, the school had what I think was the best idea in the world, creating a student council office in the basement of the library. It was an old, forgotten room with weird fluorescent lighting, but it had a big couch, a nice desk, and peace and quiet. Ostensibly, we were supposed to handle matters of state down there, but it also served as an oasis from the busyness of the school day. For Andover, I'm sure, allowing the co-presidents to use the space wasn't a huge deal, but to us, it meant the world. During our senior year, Clark and I would spend almost every weeknight in that office, sometimes cracking jokes, other times discussing student council initiatives. But what I appreciated most was our silence. We felt so deeply at ease in each other's presence that we could work silently, but always comforted by the security of the other's very being. That, to me, was among the most wonderful things about my relationship with Clark. It was very public, but it was also filled with a quiet, mutual understanding of each other's joys, burdens, and motivations. This was a love supreme. The second part is resolution. Oftentimes, we spent the nights in the basement office contemplating what we wanted out of life. In some respects, this is because our college apps forced us to do so. But there was in both of us a real existential questioning that the impending transition away from high school brought about. And Clark, by the start of our senior year, resolved that he wanted to dedicate his life to military service. It took me a while to get on board, as I think it did for other important people in his life. But like only he could, he told us respectfully that he was set in his decision. It wasn't frankly until our junior year in college that I truly started to appreciate his deep commitment to military service. Service is something higher than himself. Service is the idea of a more perfect union. He glowed with pride when he talked about the Marine Corps and explained to me the intricacies of fighter planes and the G-force that would make him nauseous as he flew them. I'd later come to envy this clarity of purpose, this resolution that he had. It transcended nationalism or patriotism Instead, Clark's abiding belief was that in devoting all of himself to service for others, he could effect real change. This was a love supreme. Now, the third part is pursuance. Pursuance of real change was a topic Clark and I would discuss frequently, right up through our last FaceTime call, just 3 weeks before his untimely passing. Even outside of this tragedy for all of us, this deeply personal tragedy for all of us, 2020 has been a year like no other. From the pandemic, to civil unrest, to racial injustice, to the toxic political system, we've been buffeted from news cycle to news cycle. And to encounter such a personal tragedy as the world has fallen apart has been, for me at least, a test of resolve like no other. And among the most maddening things about the Clark's death has been that we don't get to see how he would live out his sense of purpose. We don't get to see how he would lead through times of crisis. We don't get to see how his unflinching optimism in its own small way could make the chaos of the current moment even a bit more bearable. Clark's death is a loss for all of us, but also for our nation and world. If we are to acknowledge his legacy and resolve to live out a sense of purpose, then we must actively pursue the change he would have hoped to see. To do so would be a love supreme. And finally, the last part is Psalm. John Coltrane's album is rooted in spirituality, much in the same way Clark's life was. Clark knew that above a love supreme, there's the love supreme, the love of a living God. Found myself last night searching the book of Psalms for the right words. And David gives us a lot to work with. Captures beautifully a prayer in Psalm 27, verses 7 through 9, when he says, "Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Have mercy also upon me and answer me. When thou said, seek ye my face, my heart said unto thee, thy face, Lord, will I seek. Hide not thy face far from me. Hide not thy face far from me. Put not thy servant away in anger. Thou hast been my help. Leave me not, neither forsake me, O God of my salvation." Hope we can all take solace in these words. And like Lucas said, our pain will continue, but the love we share with Clark makes it all worth it. And what will make it bearable as we move forward will be the love we share with each other and with God. However God manifests God's self to each of us. This is the love supreme. Now, please allow me to present Laurel Cassidy, Colgate, class of 2018. Laurel's been incredibly supportive to the Perkins family as well as the rest of Clark's friends during this difficult time. And it's my pleasure to introduce her to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Junius. Can you hear me and see me? Okay, great, sorry. All right, well, I'll start by saying that I'm absolutely honored to be saying a few words about Clark Perkins today. Deb, Chip, Lucia, Sam, Charlotte, Jane, B, Frankie, and so many more names. My heart is with you guys now and always. Thank you for sharing the extraordinary Clark Perkins with us. Trying to find any words that adequately capture the force of life that Clark was is a completely futile endeavor. But I hope that in meeting all of you, who I haven't already, and continuing to exchange the memories that we all shared with him, we can begin to chip away at this impossible task together. I first met Clark our freshman year at Colgate when he lived on the floor above mine in Curtis dorm. I remember thinking when I first met him, who is a senior hanging out with all of the freshmen, because of the confidence and room-filling energy with which he carried himself. As fellow lacrosse players, our paths naturally became woven together through walks to the locker room, laughs over the notorious Coach Lee pump-up speeches, family dinners at Rosita's apartment, and the occasional themed lacrosse party, for which I'll add, Clark was always the most extravagantly dressed. It wasn't until later on in school that I truly began to understand the deep-rooted sense of commitment and service that was so integral to Clark's being. In the past 2 years, since we all watched Clark and Lucas walk across the graduation stage in their marine dress blues, that is the person that I have come to know most and absolutely adore. My boyfriend, Sam, is a fellow Marine pilot, and they followed the same trajectory. Basic school in Quantico, a year in Pensacola, followed by a year in Corpus Christi. I first sensed their budding friendship when I got a call from Sam on a Friday in October 2018 saying that he, Clark, Lucas, and Chase Cook were en route to Colgate's homecoming, a school that neither Sam nor Chase attended, ripping the 7-hour drive up to Hamilton in Clark's red Xterra. By the time I arrived with my friends, they had set up shop at the Jug with an onslaught of lacrosse players and alumni. When visiting Sam in Pensacola and later in Corpus, I got to know Clark in this completely new context, and our friendship from Colgate was a thread that made these places feel a little more like home. It was a beautiful thing to watch Clark quickly have the same impact on the students in Pensacola and Corpus that he had on the Colgate community. It was as if he invented time in the day for his friends, new and old. One weekend sticks out in my memory most from Pensacola when Junius came to visit. We sat at Hub Stacy's for hours, nursing hangovers over Bloody Marys and laughing about Junius's first jaunt at the Floribama. In that weekend, I got to see firsthand a friendship that was so rich with history and genuine love. Most recently, Clark, Sam, Chase, and Greg were living together in Corpus Christi, Texas. The first time I visited the new house, I was surprising Sam, and naturally, Clark helped me orchestrate the whole thing and was arguably more excited about executing it than I was. When I arrived and all went as planned, he had made an extra dinner for me that he was hiding in the microwave until I got there. I'm sure we can all relate to this story, those little thoughtful acts of kindness that were guaranteed to be injected into every day as a friend of Clark's. The second time I was down in Corpus was in June, when Charlotte was living with them, and I spent a month down there. At a time when the world had gone completely awry, Charlotte, Clark, Sam, Chase, Ellie, Greg, and Maisie opened the door to their insular little flight school family. I found pure joy in the moments we all shared together through dinners, games of ledge, early beach mornings, lots of IPAs, and classes with Charlotte. Clark filled up that house with energy, joy, and love in a way that no words could possibly do justice. In one of my last and fondest memories with Clark, we went for a run. He wanted the full update on all of his boys, specifically if Jackson was behaving himself in the city. We talked about flight school and how he was struggling with air sickness. We talked about our lacrosse experiences. He told me about what Sam and Lucia were up to and asked me about my own family. In the past month, I've tried to reconstruct that conversation in my head so many times. I'm sure you've all been doing the same, thinking about the last time you spoke or recreating a memory that makes you smile. It pains me that so many of these words and pieces are missing. But as I've thought about it, I've realized it's not one specific thing that he did or said that imprinted our hearts so indelibly, but it's a compilation of little things and the way he approached each day. Maya Angelou had a beautiful quote that came to mind as I struggled to piece together our run. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. It doesn't quite ring true for Clark because there's so much of what he did and he said that will never be forgotten. But I'm certain that we will all never forget the way Clark made us feel. And I know we'll never stop carrying that energy with us and emulating it in our own lives. Thank you. And I will now pass it to one of my dear friends in San Francisco, Colin Whalen. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel, for your kind words. And thank you, everybody viewing today, for taking the time to come together in honor of Clark Perkins. It's challenging to do justice to Clark's life in one speech, a conversation, a week, a month. I'm starting to realize a lifetime. One thing about Clark, though, that I've always known to be true is that he loved to challenge. Clark challenged himself at Andover, one of the most competitive high schools in the country, by running for and often winning the role of student body president. Clark then challenged himself at Colgate, achieving high marks in multiple fields of study, graduating with multiple degrees, volunteering at the local firehouse and elementary schools, and importantly, leading a group of men and my peers to a Patriot League championship in 2015, earning the title of Dad from his teammates along the way. When Clark graduated from Colgate, he continued to challenge himself in the Marine Corps, rapidly ascending to first lieutenant, graduating top of his class in flight school, a true Top Gun. None of these accomplishments fully describe Clark, though, for the man he was. Driven and hardworking, yes, but equally so, thoughtful and selfless. In the years after Colgate, I was fortunate enough to know Clark. We would typically connect over long phone calls. His career took him to Florida and Texas, mine to New York and California. On these calls with Clark, I would typically begin with the intent of checking in on Clark and ensuring he was doing okay in the competitive Marine Corps field. I would never admit it to Clark, Clay, Lucas, Sam, Chase, or Greg, or other Marines I've met at Clark services, but I've heard this military training can be quite hard. The fool I was, though, to think Clark would spend more than a moment on his own accomplishments before finding ways to unpack and deeply relate to whatever was going on in my life, whether that was relationship struggles, career decisions, social choices, or living with the regrets of a Saturday night in New York City. I always appreciate his candid feedback and miss his ability to connect with people at seemingly any level. He always pushed me to do better and made me feel proud in that pursuit of greatness. And with Clark watching over me now, I know that when I find challenges in my life, I can send prayers his way to help overcome whatever obstacles I might face. And I strongly urge you all to do the same, because even from heaven, Clark's words and untenable support feel oh so powerful. I'd also like to share one story that I really love in remembering the great Clark Perkins. Before he was a touted Marine, a fighter pilot, double major at Colgate, or established fireman, Clark was none of those things. He was just my friend. One morning, Coach Murphy, the head of our team at Colgate, made us stack wood for his neighbor in Hamilton, New York at 7 a.m. in 40-degree weather. This was to be our volunteer opportunity to make up for some less than ideal behavior in our townhouse the weekend before. While Clark was by no means an active culprit in said behavior, he was the first to volunteer and make sure we all did too. Of course, being a group who wasn't so great at listening to our coach, we went ahead and replicated our behavior the night before this fun opportunity. The 11 men in our class showed up to Coach Murphy's neighbor's house in t-shirts, shorts, and winter hats, completely dismayed at how much wood this man had bought. If he is listening to this speech today, 5 years later, I'm certain he still has some of that wood left in his garage. But anyway, as the morning hours wore on, our energy quickly started to fade. All of our energy, that is, except for Clark's. He worked harder than all of us, he motivated all of us, and was quick to bring out a speaker system when we really needed a boost. Towards the end of that morning, we had nearly built the perfect tower of wood, and one piece fell to the ground. Clark, standing nearby, immediately dove on the log and screamed "Orange," the Colgate goalie's call when a loose ball appeared by their net. He got up from the wet garage floor, sprinted to the wood pyramid, and stacked the wood on top, and high-fived all of us. I felt like we had just beaten Army in the Patriot League championship again, and all was right in the world. Within seconds, we were all invigorated by Clark's energy and started singing Colgate fight songs, sprinting between wood files, and creating a makeshift dance floor in Coach Murphy's neighbor's garage, led by Clark as a DJ. Coach Murphy, intent on punishing us, stood idly by as we made our dismal morning into one of my favorite memories of all time. Clark's energy, smile, his contagious excitement was able to change the outcome for a group of men that day, just as I know it has in so many other instances for all of you during your time knowing Clark. Clark was a true standard of a man. He was a servant leader, he was compassionate, and he was loving. I continue to be blown away by the depth of Clark's reach and how profound of an impact he had on thousands of people, if not more. I urge you all to take Clark with you or think of him when times are challenging, because I'm sure he would love another challenge in heaven. Be very happy to hear and see of the great things you are all doing. I'll now pass for a hymn at Colgate.
To the old rugged cross I will ever be true. Its shame and reproach I gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever will share. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown.
Thank you, Diane. That was beautiful. Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor Chin, and it is an honor and a privilege to share some words with you today about Clark. For context, I went to Andover with Clark, and like many here today, I considered Clark my closest friend and confidant. I was fortunate enough to live with Clark for 3 of our 4 years at Andover. 2 of those were spent rooming together with our beds not even 2 feet apart, and 1 of those years was spent overseeing a dorm of 9 freshman boys, a year that I hold very dear to my heart. In writing this speech, it was not lost on me that there are so many people out there and here today who could just as easily talk about Clark. With this in mind, I'll focus on the little slice of Clark's life that I can attest to, and will try to echo conversations I've had with his friends in the past month. To the Andover folks here today, hopefully what I'm about to share assists you in recalling your own memories of Clark. And to the non-Andover folks, it has been a joy to hear stories of Clark in his other communities, and hopefully I can give you that same gift today. I remember the first day that I met Clark during freshman year at Andover. I was on campus early for soccer preseason, and Clark was there for international student orientation. If you're raising your eyebrows at the fact that Clark, a white boy from Fairfield, Connecticut, was participating in international student orientation, you're one step closer to understanding the confusion and mystique that surrounded Clark when he first stepped on campus. I would later learn that Clark's family had been living in Spain for the past 2 years and had just moved to Connecticut. Clark and I sat down for lunch in the dining hall between practice. The contrast between my anxiety and fear and his cool, humble sureness was stark. I was shocked to learn that Clark was also a freshman, and he'd gotten to campus just 2 days before I had. Watching him warmly greet literally every person who walked by, you'd have thought that he'd been on campus for years. I was puzzled by Clark and had a million questions. How old are you? Are you from Connecticut or Spain? We just met. Why are you being so nice to me? Despite my perplexion, I knew immediately that I wanted to be his friend. A feeling I'm sure Clark evoked in many others here today. I knew that if I just stuck close to Clark, I had a chance of being at least a little bit better version of myself. That was just one component of Clark's magnetic personality that quickly vaulted him to being the nucleus of our class. And Clark took advantage of everything that Andover had to offer. He never passed up a chance to get to know someone. He immersed himself in extracurriculars like student government and Model UN, and he excelled on both the soccer and lacrosse teams. In return, Clark poured every ounce of himself back into the community. While it's natural to shine the spotlight on Clark's role as a co-president, arguably more impactful were the countless little things that Clark did when no one was watching, like taking younger students under his wing and getting people through some of the darkest points in their lives. And I really don't know how he found time to do it all. He did have a bike on campus, which his friends have pegged as one of the secrets to his success. For the Harry Potter fans out there, Clark's bike has been likened to Hermione's time turner, allowing him to fit more into a single day than should be humanly possible. We had a running joke among our friends that Clark was always, quote, getting crushed by his workload, meaning that he always had a ton of homework and tests, unmissable meetings, and was generally busy just saving the world or something. Clark actually coined the phrase himself. He would roll up to the library carrying a backpack brimming with books, looking like you could easily count the hours of sleep he'd gotten on one hand with a broken thumb to spare. He would sink into the first chair he saw, drop his forehead on the table, let out a big sigh, and say, Guys, I'm really getting crushed this week. He often used more colorful language than this, and laughter always ensued. We used to think that Clark was just getting unlucky, that his plight was a product of randomly getting slotted into the hardest classes with the hardest teachers, and that things were always just popping up out of his control. Sometimes I even hypothesized that it might be the universe trying to balance the scales for a guy who seemingly had it all figured out. As I've had time to reflect, it's become clear that both these theories couldn't be further from the truth. While most of us were optimizing our schedules around the easiest classes with the easiest teachers, also that we could finish our work early and play video games, Clark was seeking out the most challenging and rigorous courses, staying up until the wee hours of the night to get his work done, all the while carving out time to support and nurture others. I share this running joke because it centers on the thing that I admire most about Clark. He never chose the path of least resistance. After graduating from Andover, Clark's schedule only got more intense and more restrictive, yet he still found time for his Andover friends. On 2 occasions, he came to cheer me on at my soccer games in college. Both times, he was the loudest fan there. One time, he was actually asked to leave the game. Another time, he drove from Colgate to Boston to surprise me for my birthday. If you've taken an introductory economics course, you're probably familiar with the concept of opportunity cost. The idea being the cost of every decision or choice is what you could have done instead. Clark's opportunity cost when he chose to surprise me for my birthday or cheer on a Division III soccer team that was less than 500 was extremely high. He had countless other places to be and people to see. Knowing that, to me, these gestures meant the world. To Clark, making someone's day was just second nature. I remember being so proud of Clark when he embarked on his journey to become a Marine. Although I will confess, I was selfishly a little sad. I was sad because I knew it would take him further from us. However, I found solace in knowing that a new community would get to experience Clark's light. I can only imagine that everything we know and love about Clark made him an impeccable Marine. And yes, we did see less of Clark these last few years, but I know I'm not alone when I say that he never felt far away or distant. And even from afar, he still managed to make my day via regular phone calls or Snapchats, his favorite medium of choice. The last time I saw Clark was in person was in February, when he and Charlotte took a weekend trip to Boston. We reminisced about the past, about how simple things were at Andover, and where the time had gone. We also fantasized about the future, about buying vacation homes together, and returning to Vietnam and Thailand. There's no doubt that Clark had so much life and success ahead of him. It's not something I like to dwell on. Instead, I turn to the fact that Clark experienced more joy and touched more lives in 25 years than most can hope to do in an entire lifetime. Clark left no stone unturned, no friend unmade, and no duty unfulfilled, and we are all much better for having learned from him. Deb, Chip, Lucius, Sam, Charlotte, and so many others, thank you so much for sharing such an incredible human with us. We're all extremely fortunate to have been a part of his life. And next, I have the privilege of introducing someone who I'm sure I and many others here today are very much looking forward to hearing speak about Clark, and that is John Palfrey. John was head of school for the second half of our 4 years at Andover. And I know that he and Clark shared a special bond, in no small part, I'm sure, because he'd be hard-pressed to find 2 more empathetic and thoughtful leaders. Without further ado, I'll pass things over to John.
Taylor, thank you. And Junius, thank you. And everyone here today, thank you for these beautiful evocations of Clark and extraordinary opportunity to celebrate his life. Good afternoon to all those on the East Coast and the middle of the United States. Good morning and good evening to those who are participating in this Zoom from around the world. My name is John Palfrey, and I served as the 15th head of school at Phillips Academy, Andover. Most important today, I had the great privilege of being the head of school who gave Clark Perkins his high school diploma. Today, in particular, I send love to his family, friends, and classmates, and gratitude for the chance to be a part of this celebration of Clark's life, even as we struggle with deep sadness at our shared loss. Andover, as all those who went there can attest, especially Junius and Taylor and others who have spoken today, is at once a magical place and a very hard place. The two, I believe, go together. There are the long days, the cold nights, the almost impossibly hard homework assignments when you are crushed this week, and perpetual struggles against the tyranny of adults who are doing what they can to keep you safe and on a sound path as adolescents. There are also the enduring friendships, the trials won, the sense of accomplishment, the glorious fall New England days, and the triumph of a sunny graduation day, a commencement of the next phase of life, the next phase in which every Andover graduate knows they're up for just about anything. We've heard many glimpses of Clark today, and I want to offer a few of my own. As Taylor said, I did adore Clark and have many images of him in my mind. Of all the possible glimpses of Clark in the midst of the challenge and the magic of Andover, two stand out in my mind today as we honor his life. One is Clark the athlete. You all know the Clark I mean. Close your eyes for a moment, if you would, and imagine a bright spring New England day, and here comes Clark, tall, strong, handsome, confident, striding off the lacrosse field after a big win for the team. The other Clark I remember is Clark the leader, the Clark who was co-president of the school in his senior year, a Clark that was at once his own man and also inseparable from his friend and partner, Junius. It will forever for me be Junius and Clark, Clark and Junius. It was a true privilege to work with Clark in his capacity as co-president. For the Andover community, you will remember that it was the first year of the dual leadership role. Their leadership was not without controversy that found its way even before they started in print across the world in the New York Times. But he did not dwell on that part of things. That was not Clark. He leaned into the magic and the possibility of leadership, of his opportunity for service at Andover. He just got to work. Clark and Junius set a high bar for teamwork, leadership, and humility in this shared role. In the many conversations we had in my office in George Washington Hall, GW, to students, Clark demonstrated his sense of service and his responsibility in this important role. He made the case for his fellow students, chafing day after day against the overreach of the administration that I embodied, and yet he had a way of communicating clearly that it wasn't personal. He was just serving. Clark was just doing his job, not trying to be mean or take anyone down. He managed his advocacy and his criticism without an edge, a rare skill in a student of his age, skills which would serve him well as he set out to serve his country and the world. Clark walked around the Andover campus with his head up always, with his head up. He would catch the eye of anyone he walked by, greeting him with that smile. It's not unique that students are friendly at Andover. In fact, it's a trademark of the campus, big, blue, nice. But it is of note that he walked that way always. As I saw in the chat from his classmate Zoe, he never looked down on anyone. During assessment week, in the middle of winter, even when he was moving at a clip to get all the way to the playing fields for practice or riding on that bike of his. I loved Andover sports as head of school. It was a treat to watch and take part in practices on weekday afternoons, to cheer on the teams on Saturdays. I remember Clark with great clarity in those fields, both soccer and lacrosse. On Smoyer and in Phelps Stadium, Clark played big. He was loud, he played hard, and he was loud. As several people have mentioned, Clark was a great spectator. As I'd move about the fields, the rink, the courts, watching the different seasons, if Clark wasn't a player on the field, you could be sure he was a spectator, again, loudly raising the crowd to cheer for his school. I never, Taylor, saw him get thrown out of an event for cheering too loudly, but he cheered perfectly, I thought, at Andover. As I look back to campus at that time and I see Clark, I also see him, Clark the leader, at the podium. I see him rousing the crowd at the opening all-school meeting in the fall of 2013. That was one loud all-school meeting. In April 2014, Clark and Junius were asked to give the welcome at the screening of a movie called Lone Survivor. If you haven't seen it, you should. This movie depicts several servicemen, including Andover graduate Lieutenant Commander Eric Christensen, class of 1991, member of the Navy SEALs. Lieutenant Commander Christensen was killed in action during Operation Red Wings, a rescue mission. In the front, I sat that day with Admiral and Mrs. Christensen, Eric's parents. With a steady voice and a kind tone, Clark welcomed the hundreds of community members and alumni who had gathered. At one point, I saw him look right at Eric's parents and express his respect for the service of their only child and for his ultimate sacrifice. It was a moment where this young man, Clark, a senior in high school, captured an entire room and said exactly what needed to be said to that family. The second podium moment I remember so clearly is the iconic image of Clark at Andover's commencement, his commencement. He went to the podium, gave a slight nervous giggle, trademark Clark, and then looked out into the crowd with a smile. He shared remarks of gratitude and love to his family, as he should. He reflected on his Andover journey, including learning how to fail. He told us all, quote, "Andover taught me how to strive for the impossible, how to reach for perfection. This made me a better friend and a better leader." Finally, this past spring, Clark and Junius sent a message to the class of 2020 on the occasion of their commencement, one that had to be virtual due to the coronavirus. He shared words that I share with you in closing. Clark said, quote, "And as you move forward, make sure you keep your friends from Andover close and continue to be a part of each other's lives." Thank you, Clark. I miss you. We all miss you. The next up, Jenny Savino will play a video about Clark's life.
So introduce yourself and how you know Clark.
I'm Jack Hutt, and I know Clark through flight school in the Marine Corps.
Hi, my name is Abigail. I was a friend of Clark's from Andover.
Hi, I'm Emma Melman, and I went to Andover with Clark.
My name is Jackson Lanning. I know Clark from Colgate University.
I'm Alex Kirkland. I met Clark at the basic school.
My name's Liv Cabral, and I know Clark from Andover.
My name's Taylor. I was lucky enough to know Clark throughout our 4 years at Andover.
I'm Lisa Dittman. I met Clark at OCS.
I'm Allison Roth. I first met Clark freshman year of high school at Andover.
My name's Rem. I know Clark from Andover.
My name's Amy LaRue, and I met Clark at TBS.
I'm Jake Howell. I went to Andover with Clark and actually met Clark on day one of Andover during orientation.
I think everyone sort of had the same just kind of like confusion around Clark, I would say, when he first got to Andover. We were like, who is this guy? He's like Superman.
People were just like clustered around Clark. We never really met, but I knew who he was because everyone was always surrounding him, and he was like Coach P. Like, I knew who Coach P was, even though I was not in the male platoons.
Clark had this mystique about him. He gave us a quick, firm handshake, told us he was an international student from Spain.
Clark had this voice he would use. It's this very smoky, raspy voice, and he would use it in two things: when he was either singing or when he was in Spanish. And he would just be sitting in Spanish class and be like, "Profesor, cuando fui a España, he visto muchas chicas bonitas."
This guy I didn't know came in and sat down next to me and kind of gave me a little nudge. Was like, "What's up, man? What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, this guy, he knows it all. Like, he's so nice and like he's so comfortable here. Like, he must be like way ahead of me or whatever." And come to find out that I was like his second day in the squadron.
For Clark, it seemed like he kind of came in full form as, an adult. And
I remember in particular our freshman fall English class together. From the beginning, he seemed like someone who could have led the class.
At 17, 18 years old, he had an outlook on life that I would only begin to develop towards the end of college.
One thing that I think stands out to me and I'll always think of with Clark is how much of a natural leader he was. I think it was no surprise to anyone that he was our class president.
He was who you looked to when you weren't sure what to do, and he usually knew what to do. Like, he was a natural leader.
Clark, of course, was one of those people that you couldn't help but see on campus and smile and be so thrilled that you ran into him, whether or not it was you coming from the lacrosse field or getting off of his bike.
He just storms next to you while you're walking with someone else and brakes furiously. He's like, "What's up, boys?"
Anytime stuff sucked and everyone's kind of getting down, you just turn and Clark would be like, "Oh, all right, let's do it."
He would come, he would wrestle me awake, and if I didn't wake up, he'd jump in the bed and he'd be like, "Ram, time to get up."
Never saw Clark in a bad mood.
Clark never had bad days, and it was this one day where he was not having a fantastic day. And I went over to him with the intention of cheering him up. But as I was trying to do that, he was just like, "Yeah, that's just how things are. It's up, it's down. If you ever feel like I feel right now, just know that you can do better and things will be better. And today is a great day." And I walked away from the conversation and I felt like he had made my day brighter, even though I had originally wanted to help him. And that was just very Clark. He helping everyone around him instead of focusing on himself.
He would try to make people feel better at his own expense. That was the type of person he was.
He was an unbelievable facilitator of social groups. He really just, he touched a lot of different corners of the Andover class.
I'm Marjorie. I met Clark our freshman year at Andover, where we quickly became friends with the entire school.
My name's Jackie Dowling, and I knew Clark at Colgate.
My name is Jenny Savino, and I'm the director of the alumni office here at Andover.
My name is Chase Wick, and I know Clark from Colgate University, where I was lucky enough to be a teammate for 4 years and a roommate for 2 of them.
My name is Austin Geis. I went to Andover with Clark.
My name is Elizabeth Boba, and I met Clark at the basic school.
My name is Lucas Cooper, and I first met Clark through Colgate Lacrosse.
My name is Kavan Kanakarana, and I know Clark from Andover.
I will remember Clark as a person who showed us how to be kind, how to be friendly, how to be a leader, and how to work so hard.
He did everything with such joy and gratitude.
He just had this incredible ability to speak with someone and connect with them and make them feel really seen and heard.
Just being around him, just feeling important, feeling like you matter and that someone cares, and that you always have a friend in the room if he's in front of you. You always have someone to look to.
He knew I was into golf, so like I would see him when he was going to lacrosse, and he would always say like, hey, like how you playing? Like how's your practice going? And I always just had a good feeling about him.
When you played with Clark, it always took like 30, 45 minutes longer than what you expected. You would take like a few shots on him, then he'd step out of the cage. You'd be like, so man, what's new with you? You know, what's going on in your life? And on one hand, it was like, dude, come on. Like we can't be doing this every 5 minutes where you step out of the cage and then we're just chatting each other up. But for him, it wasn't about playing, you know, it was about getting to know you. And he just had such a way of connecting with people that was just remarkable.
And that's what was so Clark. He was very consistent, always the guy laughing, always the guy helping others.
You know, when we were juniors, we were both injured, and Clark had a pretty serious injury, and he would always be checking in on me, and didn't really seem too worried about himself. He was just more worried about how I was doing, and that's just kind of the guy he was.
People were dropping left and right from the heat, and Clark runs across the finish line, you know, full power, and is just like swinging around, like looks like he doesn't know where he is, but he finished like super strong. And instead of sitting down like we told him to, he was going around like checking on his buddies to see how they were doing.
I remember a few days before graduation, he called me and he was like, Jackie, I hear you have an iron. Can I use it? I'm like, of course, Clark, you can use it. Come over whenever. So I got home from class and he was all set up using my iron, pressing his uniform, just like truly enjoying himself. But the next day I got back from class and I had a handwritten thank you note saying, thank you so much. Thank you for helping me get rid of my wrinkles. So thank you, Clark, for always teaching me to find joy and gratitude in just the tiniest little things.
Clark's favorite part of cooking came after all the prep work was done. It was when the food was sizzling on the pan, you could start to smell all the flavors. Clark would get a pinch of salt. He'd lean over the edge and he'd be like, Lucas, is it time? And I'd be like, yeah, Clark, it's time. And he would go, bam.
The first thing he would say, he'd say, bring it in, bring it in. I can just feel that like warmth encompassing me. He'd say, bring it in, bring it in.
I remember his honest words when he would take to the podium so many times with Junius to address the school and to address his class.
I'm Junius. Clark and I were co-presidents at Andover. I always remember his exceptionally generous spirit.
He was incredibly wise and powerful beyond his years.
He was also incredibly humble. Every reason not to be.
I just remember like a huge moment where like I decided he was a role model for me.
She's like, I think I want to marry him. Like, that is how everyone feels when they speak with Clark.
All the girls were fawning over him. All the guys were like, how can I be like Clark?
Because he just makes you feel like you are the most important thing going on in his life at that moment.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I met Clark when I first moved down to Corpus Christi.
I'm Scott Diekema. Had the privilege of going to Andover with Clark,
Well, my name is Ellie LeBeau, and I met Clark through IFS, so basically just through flight school.
I'm Dan Buckley. Everyone's probably said this, but he's so invested in everyone.
Wow, he was so busy and had so much going on, but he wasn't protective over his time. Like he would stop to have a conversation with anyone.
You know, a lot of people can get kind of selfish and tone into just them and their success, and Clark would be so inviting to sharing the time that he had.
I didn't have all of my really great friends at Andover yet at that time, and I think it meant a lot to me that Clark would walk home with me, and those were really fun for me.
My name's Henry Kalb. I knew Clark through my 2 years at Andover. When I first met Clark, I was really struggling at Andover, and he was really one of the first people who saw a new kid and was willing to interact, not just in a superficial way.
He just so genuinely cared about what was going on in your life. Definitely just energetic, just like always there for you. Just like an all-around good guy.
He just wanted to give as much of his time as he could to enriching the experiences of others.
He had this amazing ability to like draw someone in. And I think what people talk a lot about is like he was such an amazing person in terms of like his like unyielding selflessness, right? But he had this kind of universal empathy and it just, his ability to connect with every single person he spoke to. I've never met anyone like it.
I'm a First Lieutenant Timothy Brady. I've known Clark since TBS.
My name is Jalmar Lyons. Some people call me Jay. Lived in Pemberton Cottage with Clark my senior year at Andover.
A lot of the TBS company knew about my mother passing then. And he pulled me aside that night, and with tears in his eyes, he literally said, "If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here for you anytime, night or day. I love you, dude. Like, I don't even, I can't imagine what it's like."
My mother passed away when I was 13, and that's not something I would talk to a lot of people about. But when Clark found out, he pulled me aside a little angrily and was like, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" And at first I was like, I don't know, it's just not something that comes up. And he took a step back and looked me in my eyes and said, "I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you." And especially as a 16-year-old kid, to have that type of maturity and to not just want to wish me well, but also want to share in that pain with me, that's something that will stick with me for the rest of my life.
I'm Sarah Hansen, and I met Clark at the basic school of Quantico.
Lump. Colgate Lacrosse, same class as Clark.
Hi, I'm Guanj, and I'm lucky enough to have been friends with Clark since Andover class of 2014.
My name's Tyler Davis. I met Clark at TBS.
He was confident, he was smiling, he was poised, and he just goes, "Here we go, die, here we go, boys." And all of a sudden, the fear that I was feeling and the fear that I'm sure everyone around me was feeling just subsided. And we were running around, we were jumping up and down, we were so hyped, simply because of a few reassuring words from Clark Perkins.
Clark was sitting next to me in the bleachers, and he just looks over and he's like, "Breathe, Hansen." And he just kind of sat with me. He took some deep breaths and he's like, "It's gonna be okay. Like, you'll be fine. Like, it's not that bad."
He was seeking out adversity. He was seeking out things that would challenge him.
First thing that comes to mind to me is very humble, very willing and openly to talk about things that he struggles with.
Clark steering into those things that he found difficult is such an integral part of who he was. And
I would say genuine.
The most genuine, just kind-hearted person I've ever had the privilege of knowing.
Committed to his friends, to school, to honestly surfing, literally anything he was into.
In high school, he made the most of every second, every minute, every day. Like he was always doing something, doing a million things at once. And
in 2 weeks, he'd have more stories than I would have compiled in 2 years.
Listening to Clark being Estonia and winning a Model UN conference as Estonia, which is about as hard as you can expect that it would be given the perhaps influence that you expect to have as that country.
He just sat down at the table and he cracked open a beer and just sat there and was like, "What's up, Hansen?" I was like, "Hey, Clark, what'd you select?" And he's like, "Jets."
So many fond memories of weekends in New York and Pensacola and Madrid.
He's sort of blasting Mariah Carey, "All I Want for Christmas." And we drove right past my house, drove through all of Georgetown, screaming that song. It was midsummer, nowhere near Christmas, but that's how he made us feel constantly.
I watched him have that same impact on every single person that he came into contact with. He left everyone better than he found them, and he had this profound ability to help us realize that it was okay to be present and it was okay to be in the moment.
Being named the most cliche Andover student with Clark, I always loved that we'd had that superlative together. Took it as a big honor to be included with him in that.
It's very refreshing to see people who really care about what they're doing, specifically in the Marine Corps. And that kind of leads to the third one, which is like Marine. Like, a lot of us come in and that's what we want. We want the title and we want to earn the title every day. And he specifically did that and was like, that is huge for me. I was just like, I respect this man so much.
I think he embodied everything that we teach in the Marine Corps core values. I think he was the best of us.
Tough, intelligent, and caring.
The phrase gets thrown around a lot that people are unapologetically themselves. Clark was that, but he had nothing to apologize for. It was all love. It was all warmth.
He's there. Like, he's just there for everyone. No matter what, he's just like, he's there. If you needed someone, who was there? Clark Perkins.
He was just constantly, knew what was going on in everyone's life and was like constantly the one cheering people up or pushing them on and saying like, come on, like, you got this. And I think like watching how since everything has happened, they've picked that up since he was left, and they've tried to kind of copy that. And I just think like, how neat is that he left that behind for them, because it's a family, and he made it that, and he showed them how to be a family.
I can still see his smile every time I think of him. Just, it's like a little goofy, but very encouraging.
Your contagious smile and deep care for others can never be forgotten. I am tremendously grateful for the time I got to spend with you. I love you and this amazing community that you've cultivated.
That's something that will be remembered in everyone who is lucky to know him for the rest of our lives.
Clark, we love you. We miss you.
Clark, all of us are better because of having known you, and I'm so grateful for the time I got to spend with you.
We love you, buddy. We miss you. You're always with us.
Lucky to have had Clark in our lives to make us feel so special.
From here on out, we're going to carry Clark's legacy with us through the rest of our military career and for the rest of our lives.
Willingness to challenge yourself every day is something that I'll take forward for the rest of my life.
It's never the wrong time to think about service and to think about putting other people before yourself. And that's something that he absolutely embodied, and I loved about him.
So obviously I will miss him dearly, but hope that this does a little bit of justice to his memory.
First off, I just want to send love to Deb, Chip, Lush, Sam, Charlotte, and the countless other family members that are obviously feeling this. So thank you all for sharing Clark with us. My name is Jackson Lanning. I met Clark at Colgate. He was a teammate, a classmate, a travel partner, my busmate, a father away from home, a brother, a confidant. You name it, he was it. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that this service says more than I possibly could. Everyone tuned in today from all around the world, feeling the same depth of pain and love. That's who Clark was. He was giving, he was thoughtful, and he was ardent enough to share the depths of his spirit with every single one of us. In death, he's doing the same thing as in life, bringing people together. I hope with my words today, I can give everyone a glimpse into how I knew the man and what he meant to me. Everyone has their favorite Clark tidbit or story. I personally have several favorites. I look forward to sharing many of these stories with friends and family in the months and years ahead. And of course, I have some Clark stories that will only be shared with select company over a late night bottle of Tanqueray. But here I just wanted to share a few of my favorites. There was the time when Clark's Facebook picture, unbeknownst to him, was used in an ad for a 45+ dating website. He was 20 at the time. There was the infuriating way that he ate food and had to cut up his meal so precisely to ensure that every single bite was just perfect. And then there were the small moments as my bus partner. Sitting next to each other on every away trip for 4 years, almost invariably every trip, Clark would get tired and rest his head on my shoulder, or encourage me to do the same as I faded. But perhaps my favorite moment with Clark was during the running of the bulls in Pamplona. We were there for fun, but Clark attacked our adventure with the same fervor and intensity with which he pursued everything else. Clark instituted a strict 48-hour no drinking rule before the running, and upon our arrival in Pamplona, Clark made sure we walked the course to have an advantage on the competition. The competition here being the 10,000 other runners. The morning of, 5 minutes before the bulls were released, Clark was leading us through the streets of Pamplona, unsure we would make it in time. Of course, we made it in time because, as I said before, Clark was leading. Separated during the run, I looked around after we finished at the sea of white and red clad runners and felt panic not seeing him. Ultimately, I found Clark having a stranger take his photo, and we jubilantly embraced. I decided right then and there that I didn't want to be separated from him again on that trip, and knew for certain that I never wanted to be separated again from him in life. Also, I'm pretty sure that he and the stranger taking the photo stayed in touch. But one thing I have worried during this morning process is that the many stories of Clark's kindness or his gusto could disjoint, for those who did not know him as well, the legend of the man from the person himself. After all, how could one person be so above reproach yet walk equally among us? However, that's exactly what he did. He wasn't some deity or an untouchable being. To everyone he knew or met, he was just Clark. He was one of us. Days before Clark's passing, I had another loss in my family and my dad's father. It always felt as though the two were inexplicably linked. People described my grandfather as equal parts well-read, caring, and competitive, and oftentimes people described him as the best person they'd ever met. I always agreed, until I met his equal in Clark. Clark embodied the same compassion, the same drive, and of course the same competitive spirit that made him the most well-rounded of his Colgate classmates and the top of his class in the Marines. The other reason I bring up my grandfather is due to a tradition that my grandfather created that Clark partook in whenever we traveled together. Whenever someone left home on a new adventure, my grandfather would give travel money, a symbolic $20 bill and the message, "You have a debt to repay. Pay it back when you get home safely." $20 is simply to ensure a safe passage and is always free to be spent at the receiver's discretion. Clark remains famous in my family as the only person who ever tried to repay his travel money. But to paraphrase my own father at his dad's service, I want to leave my dad away from home with the same message. Clark, this time you forgot your travel money. And as he travels into the world beyond, I lament not seeing him in this life, but the truth is I already have. I see him in the extra effort I can give every day. I see him in reconnecting with friends I haven't spoken to in too long. And I see him in the kind smiles from the most distant of strangers. But I don't get to see his squinty smile, and I don't get to feel that loving arm around me after a couple of his signature Tanqueray and tonics. I wanted you here. I wanted you here for the good times and for the bad. I wanted to dance with you at your wedding. I wanted to hold your first child, and I wanted to celebrate your endless successes. Of course, I also wanted to get too drunk at your wedding, teach your first kid their first swear word, and refuse to call you anything other than Cruz or Maverick. I wish we had more time. I'll forever wish we had more time. I love you, Clark, and I miss the hell out of you, man. I'm going to keep missing the hell out of you. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Will Young.
Thank you, Jackson. That was really beautiful. And wow, thank you to everyone that has made this day possible. Scott, the tribute video was unbelievable. All the speakers before me, really special. Clark and I were teammates for 4 years at Andover. There are so many words to describe this great man. Clark was chivalrous, charismatic, a catalyst, candid, a competitor, compassionate. There are 3 C words that I want to focus on today: community, care, and carry. Clark wasn't a guy I went to for advice. He was the guy I went to in the toughest times. That is one of the many reasons that makes this so hard. He is the guy that I would lean on in a tragedy. I'd lean on his light, his positivity, and his earnest outlook. Community. The support that this group of people has provided for one another is breathtaking. Clark's community will continue to grow and weave itself together. That's what Clark was all about, bringing people together. I met Colin Whalen for the first time yesterday, and we shared an amazing experience at the beach.
laughing and crying in each other's arms. I already consider Colin to be a dear friend. Care. I've never met someone who cared as much as Clark. There was a moment that Clark needed me during our senior year at Andover. It was a typical weekend night, and I decided to get drunk with a friend in our dormitory and proceed to the student lounge to enjoy the Western Rodeo Night festivities. I watched out for myself, chewing gum to get the smell of alcohol off my breath, avoiding faculty at all costs, keeping my distance from the gravitational pull of the mechanical bull. My friend had split off to do his own thing, and it turned out an hour later that he had passed out face down on the great lawn. That's where I found him. But of course, Clark found him first. Clark handled the situation gracefully as he always did, swiftly taking care of our friend's safety and ensuring that he got help while avoiding disciplinary action by the school under the sanctuary policy. Then, when Clark was done helping or saving this man, he turned his attention to helping me. In a rage, he helped me understand how irresponsible, selfish, and stupid my actions were. He let me have it, and I needed to hear it. He scolded me because of how much he cared about our friendship and our friend, and how much he cared about me. Months later, this same friend and I walked together to our final all-school assembly meeting as seniors. On our way, we were invited to skip the meeting and smoke as a final cap to our mischief at Andover. In a level-headed moment that I'd been prepared for, I said that I would not be joining and that my friend, who was essentially on double secret probation and still at the school because of Clark, was going to come with me. My friend was tempted to his core by that forbidden fruit, but I remained firm with a seriousness that Clark revealed in our conversation many months prior. This friend and I proceeded on our way, entered the chapel, and found the first available seat, coincidentally next to Clark Perkins. The assembly came and went. It turned out that had my friend gone off, he would have gotten expelled, but he didn't. And we sat side by side a week later, watching Clark deliver a powerful commencement speech. I watched with admiration, but I also watched with pride. Pride saved my friend from expulsion. However, it wasn't until recently that I came to the realization that I didn't save my friend. Clark did. Clark cared so much and made us all better people, and this impact will last forever. Finally, Carrie. Clark was a fireman, trained and prepared to carry people out of their burning homes. Clark carried many of us through truly tough times. Now, things are different. It is our turn to carry Clark with us in everything that we do. The other day, I went to the beach for the first time to surf. It was a perfect day. The waves were great. The weather was beautiful. This was the first time I'd gotten in the water since what happened. There was a gray, mysterious woman on the beach, gray-haired, and she was carrying a huge, awesome camera. And I went and talked to her, and she asked for my contact information in case she was able to capture anything. I was scared, emotional, and excited getting into the water. I went for the first wave and I wiped out, and I could see Clark smirking up there, thunderously clapping his hands, burying his head into my chest the way he'd always laugh. Then the next wave came, and I was nervous, excited. I went for the wave and caught it, was going fast, and just through tears, with a huge smile, rode it into the shore, went and greeted the woman again and told her all about my dear friend Clark and everything that he stood for, and thanked her dearly for capturing this amazing moment in my life. I'll always have that moment. Clark was never alone on the beach on August 26th. Now, none of us will ever be alone. We will always have Clark with us, watching, playfully teasing, and carrying us the way he always has, and the way he always will. I love you, Clark, and I love this community that you've created. Now I turn things over to Austin Gardner, a dear friend of Clark's from Colgate.
Hey everybody, I just want to say thank you for taking the time today. And I have prepared comments, but it really is so hard to quantify the impact that Clark has had. And seeing everybody here today joining us and speaking about this, the consistent words that come up, how genuine he was and how much he loved life and created it, it made it better for everybody else. So thank you all. So as I sit thinking about Clark, his life and his impact on others, I routinely come to these three words: purpose, community, and love. I also think about how remarkably good looking he was in a uniform. And I'm really shocked that I'm the first one to bring this up today because I know we've all been thinking it over this past month. So I've had the honor to know Clark through multiple transition periods in our life, beginning when we met in North Carolina our sophomore year of high school. I was a Kentucky kid playing lacrosse at a showcase with some of the best players in the country, and I really couldn't feel more out of place. Everyone there had friends they knew from club teams or other recruiting events, and I had nobody until I met Clark. It was at the end of the first day that I got on the bus and saw a guy wearing Andover athletic shorts, sitting down in a conversation with another high school lacrosse hopeful, looking cool, calm, and collected, as Clark always did. But I recognized the shorts. I had taken a very similar pair from my friend Luke, who also went to Andover. And Clark's approachable nature led me to strike up a conversation, asking if he knew my friend Luke. He responded with a massive smile that came across his face, accompanied by this unforgettable twinkle in his eye. And he says, "Absolutely, I know Luke. He's a great guy." Clark then moved his seat so he could be next to me, and that's when he got me. His ability, even in a hyper-competitive, intense environment like a lacrosse recruiting showcase, to break down barriers and demonstrate that he genuinely cared about getting to know you had me hook, line, and sinker. From that point on, Clark and I stayed in touch, really as millennial pen pals, if you will. We'd occasionally see each other at other showcases, and often we're on the same team. We'd always be cheering each other on, Clark typically the loudest. Clark became a staple in my life, like for so many others. Clark was the person I could always depend on. Through my life, if I ever felt I couldn't overcome a challenge, I'd go to Clark, as I'm certain this is a shared experience for everyone attending today. Clark would sit down and say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, dude, what do you mean you can't do it? You're great at this. Of course you'll crush it." And it was this confidence that Clark had in me and my ability to succeed that I would feel this overwhelming sense of confidence that I could accomplish whatever challenge I'm facing, that I can accomplish anything. Clark was the most purposeful and intentional person I've ever had the privilege to know. Clark knew he wanted to be a Division I lacrosse player, even with a broken back, and he purposefully and methodically went about taking care of his body, his academics, and ensuring that he got the right exposure to college coaches. Clark felt it was his duty to serve both his community and his country. After a journey of finding his way to Colgate, Clark immediately joined the Hamilton Volunteer Fire Department and found a way through countless long drives to Albany, get admitted to and thrive in an OCS program, later becoming a first lieutenant in the Marine Corps. My favorite story of Clark's intentionality was during our later years in college. Clark drove the long 4+ hours to New York City to support Jane's work with the Martha Graham Dance Company. It was during this show that Clark first saw Charlotte, and he made it his purpose to get to know her. After the show, he was set to attend a meal with the dancers, so Clark moved his place setting so it was next to Charlotte's. Following what I'm sure was an evening full of charm and laughter, Clark drove up early the next morning to get back to Colgate for physical therapy. 8 hours total in the car at this point. But having made it his purpose now to ask Charlotte on a date, he drove back to New York City the next weekend, attended another show, and you better believe he made sure his place setting for the post-show's gala was right next to Charlotte's. To me, this demonstrates Clark's passion and intentionality so clearly. He would not let anything deter him from supporting the people that he loved. Beyond these examples of the intentionality Clark embodied, Clark made it his purpose to be a great man, something he did every day. Not just through his actions, but through how he led a life that inspired others. Clark making his purpose to be a great man led to an unmeasurable impact he's had on others to compel anyone he met to habitually do the right thing, just as he did. Community. Just take a look at today's speakers. Clark surrounded himself with some of the most brilliant and interesting people I've ever had the privilege to know. And through knowing Clark while he was at Andover and then through Colgate and later while he was an officer in the Marine Corps, Clark had this uncanny ability to bring people together. It is truly like the most remarkable thing. And whenever Clark would run into an old classmate at Andover, he'd take a Snapchat with the hashtag connected Andover. Something I thought was pretty great and pretty funny. So anytime I'd meet somebody that went to Andover, the first thing I do is take a Snapchat and send it to Clark with the hashtag connected Andover. And the second thing I do is tell the person that I know Clark Perkins. And if you ever had the opportunity to tell somebody who knew Clark that you were close with Clark Perkins, it was a golden ticket to acceptance. It was through this desire to learn about, love, and perpetually support the people in his life that Clark built something more than a community, but a true family that will transcend his life. And this leads perfectly into an observation about Clark's life, another gift that we all had the opportunity to share. Clark's true love of living and love that he so willingly gave to others created these unbelievably special moments in every interaction he had. This held true. This is the true immeasurable nature of Clark's impact. And when you shared a moment together with Clark in a class, at a bar, on a field, in training, or in passing, Clark gave you the fullness of his love, attention, and genuine desire to demonstrate that he cares about and supports you. And it was through this that when you shared a moment with Clark, you felt comfortable and confident to be yourself, your true self. Because Clark believed in you and loved you for who you truly are. So many people live a life without feeling they can truly be themselves. And to have the opportunity to be your full self is to truly live. It is through these moments Clark created with every interaction he had that we are all so lucky to share, where Clark gave people the gift of life, living a true life, if just for a moment. It is for moments like that and so many others that I am thankful. Thankful beyond words for myself and so many other people. It is also why I hurt so badly that these moments won't happen again with Clark. But it is for all of us to carry this gift, the purpose in which Clark lived, the communities he built, and the love that he gave so openly and freely with us each and every day. To Clark, thank you. I love you, and not a day will go by that I don't miss you with all my heart. And I hope that you're finally enjoying deli sandwiches that meet your obscenely high standards. With that, I want to tell everybody here that I love you, I'm here for you, and I'll turn it over to Corey for some closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who participated, those who stayed in attendance this afternoon. It truly was a beautiful ceremony. Closing in the 23rd Psalm, we read, "When I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." And of course, we read that psalm and we know that we're talking that God is with us even through the dark valley, through the valley of the shadow of death. But what I didn't understand when I was young is that the way that God is often with us is by putting other people in our lives. And it was just so clear to me today, hearing all of these stories, that Clark was with so many of you in the most challenging of days, through the darkest valleys. So now you, at your young age, go and live like Clark. Go and support, and care for others. Ask others how they're doing. Care for one another in community. You have this great community of friends, more than you even realize, because Clark has brought you together. So may we live in such a way. So now I pray God's blessing upon you all. May you go in peace to love God, to care for others, and live in a way that honors Christ, that honors Christ's life, and that honors Clark's memory. You are dismissed.